13 seconds. That's how long it took for the world to end. Ignore the eruption for a moment. Ignore the fires. Ignore the years of cold that followed. Focus on the fall. From the moment the asteroid became a visible streak in the sky over what is now the Gulf of Mexico to the moment it slammed into the shallow sea off the coast of what is now the Yucatan Peninsula, roughly 13 seconds passed. Every dinosaur alive on the planet that morning had 13 seconds left in a world that still made sense. They didn't know it. They couldn't have known it. And what happened in that fraction of a minute rewrote the entire history of life on this planet. This is the story of those 13 seconds. What was happening in the sky? What was happening on the ground? And why almost everything you were taught about how the dinosaurs died is either incomplete or wrong. Start with the rock itself, about 6 miles across. Some estimates push it closer to 9. Either way, big enough that if you dropped it into New York Harbor, it would poke out above the clouds. Mount Everest is about 5.5 miles tall from base to summit. This thing was bigger than Everest, moving through space at roughly 45,000 miles per hour. That's about 20 times faster than a bullet from a hunting rifle. Fast enough that if it had been aimed at the moon instead of Earth, it would have crossed the distance in about 5.5 hours. For most of the previous 4.5 billion years, that rock had been minding its own business somewhere in the outer asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Something knocked it loose. We don't know exactly what. A collision, probably. A gravitational nudge from a passing body. Whatever it was, it happened tens of millions of years before the impact, and the rock spent all that time on a slow, patient trajectory toward a planet that had no idea it was coming. On the morning of the impact, the dinosaurs were doing what dinosaurs had been doing for 165 million years. Eating, fighting, sleeping, raising young. Triceratops herds were moving across the floodplains of what is now Montana. T-Rex was hunting the same herds or scavenging what the herds left behind. In the shallow inland sea that once ran through the middle of North America, mosasaurs the length of a Greyhound bus were tearing apart anything smaller than themselves. Pterosaurs the size of small aircraft were riding thermal currents over what is now Texas. The Cretaceous world was full, complex, and stable. It had been stable, more or less, for longer than mammals have existed as a group. Then the rock hit the atmosphere. 13 seconds. Let's slow it down. At second 1, the asteroid punches into the upper atmosphere at roughly 62 miles up. That's about 12 times the height of Mount Everest. At that altitude, the air is almost nothing, so almost nothing slows the rock down. But even that thin trace of atmosphere is enough, at 45,000 miles per hour, to superheat the front of the asteroid. The rock starts to glow. From the ground, if you were standing in what is now Mexico, you would see a new light appear in the daytime sky, bright enough to cast shadows. By second 3, the asteroid is at about 30 miles up. The air is denser now. The friction is enormous. The rock is compressing the atmosphere in front of it into a wall of superheated plasma. Temperatures on the leading edge climb past 20,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hotter than the surface of the sun. If you were still watching from that beach, the light would now be blinding. A second sun, brighter than the real one, dropping out of the southern sky at an angle of about 60 degrees from vertical. That angle matters. Hold on to it. We'll come back to it, because the tilt of the impact is one of the reasons this particular rock, at this particular moment, was so much worse than it had to be. By second 7, the asteroid is at about 15 miles up. It's starting to break apart from the aerodynamic stress, but not fast enough to matter. Most of the mass is still intact. The shockwave in front of the rock is already reaching the surface of the Earth. Anyone or anything within about 500 miles of the impact zone is now dead from the pressure wave alone. They don't know it yet. Sound travels at about 767 miles per hour at sea level. The shockwave is moving much faster. Death arrives before the noise. By second 10, the leading edge of the asteroid is at about 6 miles up. The temperatures around it are so extreme that the air itself is being converted into a soup of ionized gas. Rock vaporizes off the surface of the asteroid in enormous quantities. If you were in orbit above the Yucatan at this moment, you would see a spear of white light stabbing down through the clouds, brighter than anything humans have ever built. At second 13, the asteroid touches the sea, except it doesn't really touch the sea because the sea gets out of the way. A rock 6 miles across, moving at 45,000 miles per hour, doesn't splash. It punches straight through the water column, through the seafloor, through the crust of the Earth itself. The initial hole is about 60 miles wide and 20 miles deep. That's deeper than the Marianas Trench. The rock displaces about 25 trillion tons of Earth in the first fraction of a second after impact. Now, the angle comes back. The Chicxulub, pronounced Cheek-Shu-Lub, impactor didn't come in straight down. It came in at roughly 60 degrees from vertical, from the northeast. That angle spread the destruction across a much wider area than a vertical impact would have. It also aimed a huge volume of vaporized rock, specifically vaporized sulfur-rich rock, straight up into the atmosphere on a trajectory that would circle the entire planet. A steeper angle would have buried more of the vaporized material underground. A shallower angle would have skipped some of the energy off the atmosphere. 60 degrees was almost perfectly calibrated to do maximum damage to the biosphere. If the same rock had hit the deep ocean instead of a shallow sea over a specific kind of sulfur-heavy rock formation, the extinction might not have happened at all. If the angle had been different by even 15 degrees, we might still have dinosaurs, not birds, actual, terrestrial, walking, roaring dinosaurs. The bad luck of that morning wasn't that a rock hit Earth. It was that this specific rock hit this specific place at this specific angle at this specific speed. We'll come back to why. But first, the crater. By 1 second after impact, the hole punched into the Earth is starting to collapse. Rock, superheated and behaving like liquid, rushes back in to fill the void. The final crater will be about 110 to 120 miles wide. Roughly the distance from Los Angeles to San Diego and back. It's still there. You can see it in gravity maps of the northern Yucatan Peninsula. Chicxulub. The word means tail of the devil in the local Mayan language, which turned out to be more appropriate than anyone knew when they named it. Around the rim of the collapsing crater, a wall of debris blasts outward at hypersonic speeds. Some of this material is thrown so hard that it escapes Earth's atmosphere entirely and enters orbit, eventually raining back down on the other side of the planet. Some of it stays in the upper atmosphere as a global blanket of dust and sulfur. A thin layer of this debris is now buried in rock layers on every continent. If you know where to look, you can put your finger on the exact moment the world changed. It's a dark line, sometimes only an inch thick, sandwiched between older rock and younger rock. Below the line, dinosaur fossils. Above the line, none. Stand at the impact site in the seconds after the strike, and there's nothing left of you to stand with. The temperature at ground zero briefly exceeds the surface of the sun. Every living thing within 1,000 miles is vaporized or incinerated. That's not the worst part. The worst part is what happens next. The impact throws billions of tons of vaporized rock high into the atmosphere. As gravity pulls this material back down, it re-enters the atmosphere at high speed, glowing red-hot from friction, across the entire planet. At the same time, the sky fills with what are essentially artificial meteors, trillions of them, from horizon to horizon. Everywhere, the sky glows red. Ground temperatures spike, forests ignite. This is happening in China. This is happening in Argentina. This is happening in what is now Antarctica. There is nowhere on Earth to hide from a sky that is trying to cook you. Picture yourself in a forest in what is now Wyoming, 6 hours after the impact. You feel the ground temperature climbing. The air smells like a hot oven. Look up and the sky isn't blue anymore. It's the color of the inside of a fireplace. Pine needles start smoldering on the branches around you. You have no idea what's happening because nothing like this has ever happened in your ancestors' entire evolutionary history. There is no instinct for this. There's no place to run. The global firestorms burn for weeks. In some places, months. When they finally die down, the atmosphere is choked with soot, ash, and sulfur aerosols. Sunlight can no longer reach the surface at anything close to normal intensity. Temperatures crash. What had been a warm, humid greenhouse world becomes something that looks more like a nuclear winter. Photosynthesis fails almost everywhere. The base of the food chain, phytoplankton in the oceans and plants on land, dies off in huge numbers within months. And now the extinction really starts. The asteroid did not kill most of the dinosaurs. Most of the dinosaurs were killed by what the asteroid did to the food supply. Big herbivores need enormous amounts of vegetation every day. When the plants stop growing, the herbivores starve within weeks. When the herbivores die, the predators lose their prey base. Within a year, maybe 2, most of the large-bodied dinosaurs on Earth were dead not from the impact but from famine. The rock started it. Hunger finished it. Small animals fared better. Anything that could hide in a burrow, eat seeds, eat insects, eat carrion, eat dead vegetation, had a shot. Mammals, mostly small and mostly nocturnal, were already good at that lifestyle. So were some small birds, which is to say, some small dinosaurs. So were crocodilians, which could go months without eating and could survive on almost anything that fell into the water. So were certain freshwater fish, insects, and turtles. The pattern of survival tells you what the killer really was. The killer was the collapse of the sunlight-based food chain. Anything that depended directly on fresh plant matter or fresh meat was in trouble. Anything that could scavenge dead material or exploit detritus had a chance. Which brings us to something almost nobody talks about. The dinosaurs were already in trouble before the asteroid hit. For about 10 million years before the impact, the sea levels had been dropping. Global climate had been slowly cooling. The Deccan Traps, a series of massive volcanic eruptions in what is now India, had been pumping carbon dioxide and sulfur into the atmosphere on and off for tens of thousands of years. Some paleontologists argue that dinosaur diversity was already declining before the rock ever arrived. Not everyone agrees. The fossil record in the last few 100,000 years of the Cretaceous is patchy, and different formations tell slightly different stories. But the general picture is this. The world of 66 million years ago was not the healthy, thriving Cretaceous of the fossil documentaries. It was a stressed system, already leaking. Volcanoes had been softening it up. Sea levels had been reshuffling the shorelines. The asteroid didn't kill a robust ecosystem, it killed a wobbling one. Imagine a boxer who has been taking body shots for 10 rounds and is still upright, still fighting. The asteroid was the uppercut that finally put him down. Without those 10 rounds of body shots, the uppercut might not have been enough. That's part of why the extinction was so uneven. Some groups vanished completely. All non-avian dinosaurs, all pterosaurs, all mosasaurs and plesiosaurs, most marine reptiles, roughly 3/4 of all species on Earth. Other groups came through with only moderate losses. Mammals lost species, but the survivors bounced back within a few million years. Crocodilians lost some diversity, but the core lineage sailed through. Birds, meaning the small feathered theropods that had learned to fly, made it. Not all of them, but enough. You are the beneficiary of that unevenness. Every mammal alive today, every human being watching this video is descended from something small and warm-blooded that got lucky 66 million years ago. Not necessarily smart luck, not necessarily talented luck, just luck. A burrow deep enough, a diet flexible enough, a metabolism that could ride out a cold snap. Somewhere in your genetic history is an animal about the size of a rat that spent the year after the impact eating whatever it could find and hiding from what little was left of the daylight. Everything you are traces back to that survival. Now come back to the number 13 seconds, from the moment the asteroid became a visible flash in the sky to the moment it hit the sea. That's the window in which everything that was going to happen was already decided. The angle was already set. The speed was already set. The size was already set. The composition of the seafloor at Chicxulub was already set. There was nothing any dinosaur could have done. There was nothing any organism on Earth could have done. The math had already worked itself out in space over tens of millions of years, and it arrived on a Tuesday morning wrapped in fire. If you had been standing on that beach, watching the light grow in the sky, you would not have understood what you were seeing. You would have noticed the sun getting a companion. You would have felt a strange pressure in your ears. You would have seen animals stop what they were doing and look up, then the shockwave, then nothing. 13 seconds from the perspective of the planet is nothing. It's a heartbeat. The Earth is 4.5 billion years old. Life on Earth is roughly 3.8 billion years old. The dinosaurs alone ended the largest, most successful group of land animals in the history of the planet, and cleared the stage for everything that came after, including us. There would be no primates without the extinction. There would be no humans without the extinction. Sitting on your couch right now, in a house, in a country, in a species that would not exist if the rock had missed. You are watching this video because of 13 seconds that happened before there was anything on Earth capable of counting them. That's the part that still gets me. Not the size of the rock, not the temperature of the fireball, not the crater still buried under the Yucatan. It's the smallness of the window. 13 seconds decided everything, and there was no author of those 13 seconds. No plan, no design, just physics, playing out on a scale so large it doesn't feel like physics anymore. It feels like fate, but it isn't fate. It's the same physics that governs the coffee cooling next to you and the light bulb over your head and every breath you're taking right now. The dinosaurs didn't lose to a better predator. They didn't lose to a smarter competitor. They didn't lose because they were doing anything wrong. They lost to a rock, and the rock didn't even know they were there. That's what deep time does to you when you sit with it long enough. It empties the room of villains. There's no one to blame for the end of the Cretaceous. There's no one to thank for the rise of mammals. There's just the slow, indifferent machinery of a universe that occasionally throws a mountain at a planet and sees what happens. 66 million years ago, one of those mountains hit us. And here you are, because of it, turning off the TV in a few minutes, going to bed in a house on a planet that used to belong to something else. 13 seconds. That's all it took. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.